the moments humanity accidentally broke logic. Humanity likes to imagine itself as the dominant species, brilliant, inventive, rational. But if you zoom out across thousands of years of history, another pattern emerges. An endless chain of decisions so baffling, so misguided, and so aggressively illogical that they've shaped civilizations as much as our achievements have. These aren't small mistakes. They're the moments entire societies, armies, governments, and scientific communities collectively agreed to do something that, to any outside observer, would look like the setup for a cosmic joke. Empires destroyed themselves because nobody questioned a terrible idea. Scientists detonated experiments without understanding them. Governments created policies that made reality worse in every measurable way. Communities adopted beliefs that defied biology, physics, or common sense. And individuals, given too much confidence and not enough information, triggered disasters that still echo in textbooks. Across these 45 stories, we won't be looking at stupidity in its mild, everyday form. We'll be examining stupidity at scale. Stupidity that rewrites history, redirects nations, collapses ecosystems, or becomes a permanent cautionary tale etched into collective memory. This is not a roast of the past. It's a map of the peculiar, repeated truth about our species. Humans have always been clever enough to imagine brilliance, but impulsive enough to choose chaos instead. Welcome to the Absurdist Files. File 13, 45 Dumbest Things Humanity Has Ever Done. A tour through the decisions so catastrophic, they barely seem real. Historical blunders that changed the world. 1. The Trojans bringing a giant wooden horse inside their own city. One of the most legendary blunders in ancient history. The Trojans discovered a giant wooden horse left by the Greek army and, despite warnings, omens, and basic suspicion, celebrated by dragging it inside the city walls. That night, Greek soldiers climbed out from inside, opened the gates, and ended the 10-year war in hours. Historians debate the story's accuracy, but the symbolism remains timeless. Humanity's tendency to treat suspicious objects as gifts, especially when we're flattered or tired of thinking. The Trojan horse isn't just a myth. It's a template for thousands of mistakes that followed. 2. Medieval Europe believing bathing causes disease. For centuries during the Middle Ages, many Europeans believed bathing opened the pores and allowed illness to seep into the body. As a result, entire populations stopped washing. Diseases spread more easily, lice and plague flourished, and medical records noted the smell of cities from miles away. Royalty often perfumed themselves instead of bathing. Ironically, avoiding water in an attempt to stay healthy made societies far sicker. It took hundreds of years for hygiene to return to pre-medieval levels. 3. China burning its own treasure fleet in the 1400s. During the Ming Dynasty, China possessed the greatest naval fleet on Earth, massive treasure ships that dwarfed European vessels. But in the 1430s, political factions convinced the emperor that exploration was wasteful, and the fleet was burned. Maps were destroyed. Shipbuilding knowledge was suppressed. This decision effectively eliminated China from future global exploration, giving European powers uncontested dominance. Historians call it one of the greatest self-inflicted setbacks in human history. 4. The Great Molasses Flood caused by ignoring physics. In 1919, a company in Boston filled a massive molasses tank beyond capacity, despite visible cracks and loud groaning noises. Workers painted the tank brown to hide the leaks. It eventually burst, releasing a 35-mile-per-hour wave of hot molasses through the city, killing 21 people and destroying buildings. Investigators concluded the tank failed due to poor construction, negligence, and optimism. A molasses tsunami remains one of humanity's strangest industrial disasters. 5. The British sending soldiers in bright red coats into forest warfare. During colonial conflicts, the British insisted on fighting in bright red uniforms, ideal for open-field European battles, disastrous in forest combat. American militias easily spotted them. British officers refused to change uniforms for years, arguing it would be undignified. Thousands died due to tactical vanity. It remains one of the most avoidable strategic blunders in military history. 6. Australia. Introducing cane toads to fix a beetle problem. In 1935, Australia imported thousands of cane toads to control beetles harming sugarcane. Instead, the toads ignored the beetles, multiplied explosively, poisoned predators, devastated ecosystems, and are still spreading today. Scientists admit it is one of the most catastrophic biological control failures ever recorded. The beetles survived. Everything else suffered. 7. The Dutch tulip mania bubble. In the 1600s, tulip bulbs became so fashionable in the Netherlands that people spent entire fortunes to buy them. At the peak, a single bulb cost more than a house. Then the market collapsed overnight, plunging investors into ruin. It remains one of the earliest and dumbest speculative bubbles, proof that humanity never needed cryptocurrency to behave irrationally. 8. The Great Fire of London, fueled by storing gunpowder everywhere. Before the Great Fire of 1666, Londoners commonly stored barrels of gunpowder in their homes for emergencies. When a bakery fire spread, these gunpowder caches exploded across the city, accelerating the destruction. The fire burned for 4 days and destroyed 13,000 houses. Officials later admitted gunpowder storage contributed significantly to the disaster, an understatement of historic proportions. 9. Napoleon invading Russia in winter. In 1812, Napoleon launched an invasion of Russia without proper winter equipment, expecting a quick victory. Instead, his army faced brutal cold, starvation, disease, and relentless Russian tactics. Over 400,000 soldiers died. The invasion remains one of the most disastrous military decisions ever made, repeated tragically by Hitler in 1941. 10. The Dancing Plague of 1518. In Strasbourg, a woman began dancing uncontrollably in the streets. Instead of arresting her, authorities believed music therapy would help, so they hired musicians. Hundreds joined her, dancing for days until many collapsed or died of exhaustion. Historians believe it was mass hysteria, worsened by the city's attempt to treat chaos with more chaos. Scientific misfires and technological disasters. 11. NASA accidentally erasing the original moon landing footage. In the 2000s, NASA admitted that the original Apollo 11 telemetry tapes, containing the raw, highest quality footage of humanity's first steps on the moon, were likely overwritten during routine tape recycling in the 1980s. The most important video in human history disappeared because storage was limited and someone treated the tapes like regular data. Historians called it an archival catastrophe. NASA called it unfortunate. Humanity called it incredibly on brand. 12. The Chernobyl engineers turning off safety systems during a test. In 1986, engineers at the Chernobyl nuclear plant disabled multiple safety protocols to run a late-night experiment they barely understood. The reactor surged uncontrollably, exploded, and caused one of the worst nuclear disasters in history. The meltdown contaminated large parts of Europe and displaced hundreds of thousands. The cause? A deadly combination of overconfidence, miscommunication, and the belief that it'll probably be fine. 13. The Mars Climate Orbiter lost because NASA mixed up units. In 1999, NASA lost a $327 million spacecraft because one engineering team used imperial units, pounds, while another used metric, newtons. The mismatch caused the probe to enter Mars's atmosphere at the wrong angle and burn up instantly. The official report described it as failure to convert units. It remains one of the most expensive math errors ever made. 14. The scientist who tried to hatch eggs with a corpse. In ancient Greece, philosopher Empedocles believed life spontaneously generated from heat. To prove it, he placed eggs inside a dead animal, expecting them to hatch via body warmth. They did not. The experiment rotted quickly, attracting flies, and proved absolutely nothing except that early science was equal parts curiosity and chaos. 15. The time the U.S. dropped nuclear bombs on itself. Twice. During the Cold War, the U.S. military accidentally dropped 2 nuclear bombs over North Carolina when a B-52 broke apart in midair. Multiple safety switches failed, and 1 bomb came seconds away from detonating. The only reason North Carolina still exists is because 1 final switch out of 4 did not trigger. Government documents later admitted the bombs were dangerously close to exploding. Humanity was dangerously close to deleting a state. 16. The scientist who created explosive flower dust storms indoors. In the 18th century, chemist Jan Hendrik Schoen attempted to demonstrate how flour can combust when aerosolized. He filled a room with flour dust, then lit a candle. The explosion destroyed the lab and injured multiple assistants. The incident taught future generations about explosive particulates and taught his contemporaries that scientific curiosity should not include making indoor bombs. 17. The engineer who built a bridge that collapsed from its own design. The Tacoma Narrows Bridge, opened in 1940, was designed with thin, flexible materials to cut costs. Engineers ignored warnings about wind resonance. Months after opening, the bridge twisted violently in strong winds, oscillated like a ribbon, and collapsed spectacularly. Footage of its failure became a global lesson in physics and a testament to ignoring nature's feedback. 18. The scientist who accidentally created the deadliest substance known to man. In 1897, chemist Alfred Werner isolated botulinum toxin while studying food spoilage. At the time, nobody knew a few nanograms could kill a human. Werner didn't intend to discover a bioweapon, but botulinum toxin later became the foundation of bioterror concerns and Botox. Humanity will forever be ironic. 19. The lab accident that created a monster fatberg under London. In the 2010s, UK engineers flushed leftover cooking fats, oils, and laboratory waste into sewers to study flow patterns. Unexpectedly, the waste combined with wipes and chemicals to form a massive 15-ton fatberg that clogged the city's infrastructure. It took weeks to remove. Engineers called it a learning experience. London called it a monster. 20. The scientist who tried to control weather with dynamite. In the early 1900s, meteorologist Charles Hatfield claimed he could make rain by releasing chemicals into the air. To prove it, he set off hundreds of explosive mixtures on a tower in San Diego. It worked, sort of. Torrential rains flooded the city, destroyed dams, and killed around 50 people. Hatfield asked for payment. The city refused. Social logic failures. Time humanity forgot to think. 21. The witch trials that executed innocent people for floating wrong across Europe and colonial America. Thousands were accused of witchcraft based on arbitrary tests. The most infamous? Throwing the accused into water. If they floated, they were witches. If they sank, they were innocent, but often drowned. Logic played no part. The tests were designed to produce guilt regardless of outcome. Instead of investigating real causes of disease, crop failure, or conflict, societies chose fear over thought and punished their own neighbors. Historians now view the witch trials as one of humanity's clearest eras of collective panic and collective stupidity. 22. People once thought tobacco cured diseases. For centuries, doctors recommended smoking for asthma, lung infections, and even throat irritation. Tobacco companies advertised cigarettes as healthy, with slogans like, "More doctors smoke Camels." Some hospitals even provided patients with packs. It wasn't until the mid-20th century, after decades of rising illness, that science confirmed the opposite. Humanity embraced a habit that caused the very diseases it was supposed to prevent. It remains one of the most damaging public health miscalculations in history. 23. Victorian Britain's obsession with arsenic poisoning as cosmetics. In the 1800s, Victorian women used arsenic-based powders, soaps, and wafers to achieve pale skin. Arsenic was literally marketed as a beauty supplement. Side effects included vomiting, diarrhea, organ failure, and death. The poison was so common in household products that accidental poisoning became routine. Only after widespread fatalities did governments begin regulating it. Humanity's pursuit of beauty has rarely been logical, but arsenic skincare was a spectacular low point. 24. The U.S. Prohibition era, banning alcohol that made drinking even more dangerous. In the 1920s, the U.S. outlawed alcohol to reduce crime and improve health. Instead, it created an enormous black market, empowered organized crime, increased violence, and led people to drink unsafe bootleg alcohol, some of which caused blindness or death. Even worse, the government secretly poisoned industrial alcohol to deter consumption. The policy intended to eliminate harm ended up multiplying it. Prohibition remains a landmark example of social engineering gone catastrophically wrong. 25. Victorian doctors prescribing mercury for almost everything. For centuries, mercury was used as a treatment for syphilis, constipation, skin problems, and even depression. Doctors recommended swallowing it, rubbing it on skin, or inhaling its fumes. Mercury poisoning symptoms, tremors, delirium, tooth loss, were mistaken for disease progression, leading to increased dosage. Some patients literally died from their medicine. It took generations for science to realize mercury was toxic. The cure was worse than the illness. 26. Medieval Europeans believing cats were evil, which helped spread the plague. In the Middle Ages, cats were associated with witchcraft and Satan, leading to mass killings of cats across Europe. With fewer predators, rat populations exploded, exactly the species that carried plague-infested fleas. The decision to eliminate cats helped spread the Black Death, which killed up to 200 million people. Historians call it one of the most disastrous, superstition-based decisions ever made. 27. The era when people used radium as a health supplement. In the early 1900s, radium was marketed as a miracle substance. Companies sold radium water, radium toothpaste, radium face cream, and even radium chocolate. Athletes drank radium tonics for vitality. It wasn't until famous victims, like industrialist Eben Byers, who literally drank his bones away, suffered horrifying deaths, that the truth emerged. Humanity had willingly consumed radioactive poison in the name of wellness. 28. Governments draining wetlands, destroying ecosystems, then realizing wetlands prevent floods. For centuries, many governments drained wetlands to create farmland or reduce undesirable swamps. They unknowingly destroyed critical ecosystems, endangered species, and eliminated natural flood control systems. Cities built on drained wetlands later experienced catastrophic flooding, ironically, caused by removing the very landscapes designed by nature to prevent it. Billions were spent trying to fix the consequences of a mistake rooted in ecological misunderstanding. 29. The era when people used lead pipes and kept using them after knowing the risks. Ancient Romans used lead piping extensively, unaware of the neurological damage it caused. But even after modern science proved lead's toxicity, many cities continued using lead pipes into the 20th and even 21st century. The Flint, Michigan water crisis proved that humanity didn't just make a mistake once, it kept repeating it. Lead remains one of the most persistent examples of willful ignorance. 30. The time humanity believed the world would end in the year 1000. As the year 1000 approached, panic spread across Europe. Many believed the apocalypse was imminent based on interpretations of religious texts and astronomical events. People abandoned farms, donated property, and fled cities. When January 1st, 1001 arrived, and the world continued normally, chroniclers noted embarrassment and confusion. It was one of humanity's earliest documented end-of-the-world scares, one of many that would follow. Peak stupidity, humanity at its most chaotic. 31. The man who tried to make a self-operating guillotine. In the 1700s, a French amateur inventor attempted to create a self-decapitating machine to demonstrate mechanical precision. It worked on him. He tested it alone, triggered the mechanism, and died instantly. Newspapers of the time described it as a passionate demonstration of flawed genius. It remains one of the earliest documented cases of inventors falling victim to their own invention. 32. The 1900s project to introduce hippos into U.S. swamps as food. In 1910, U.S. politicians seriously proposed solving meat shortages by importing African hippos to Louisiana wetlands and farming them for lake bacon. Congress debated the plan, but ignored the fact that hippos kill more people in Africa than most predators. The idea narrowly failed. Historians say it would have created an ecological disaster. America was one vote away from hippo ranching. 33. The time a city built a bridge too low for buses. In the 1970s, a U.S. coastal city commissioned a pedestrian bridge, but built it too low to accommodate buses, blocking access for thousands of daily riders. Instead of raising the bridge, officials rerouted buses miles around it. Taxpayers spent millions fixing maps, signage, and schedules. The bridge was eventually rebuilt. The original engineer insisted the measurements looked right at the time. 34. The Soviet anti-tank dogs that ran back to their own side. During World War II, the Soviet Union trained dogs to carry explosives toward enemy tanks, but they trained the animals using Soviet tanks with familiar smells. In battle, terrified dogs ran back to the Soviet lines, detonating prematurely. The strategy was abandoned immediately. Historians cite it as one of the worst designed military programs of the century. 35. The town that painted its roads with poisonous glow-in-the-dark paint. A European town in the early 1900s painted road signs with radium-based glow paint to make them visible at night. Citizens applauded until cases of radiation sickness emerged years later. The paint was so toxic that workers who applied it suffered horrific health problems. Cleanup efforts took decades. The glow lasted far longer than anyone hoped. 36. The city that built a parking garage with no entrance. In the 1980s, developers in Spain constructed a multi-level underground parking garage, but forgot to include ramps for cars to enter or exit. Only after completion did anyone realize the oversight. Engineers proposed cutting new tunnels, but costs were astronomical. The structure was eventually repurposed as storage. The city blamed communication issues. Drivers blamed architects. 37. The farmer who tried to remove a tree stump with 3 tons of explosives. In 2004, a farmer in New York attempted to clear a stubborn tree stump by burying thousands of pounds of illegal explosives underneath. The blast shattered windows miles away and created a crater large enough to be seen from above. The stump vaporized. So did half the barn. No one was injured, but police called it an unusually enthusiastic landscaping choice. 38. The time humanity nearly destroyed the ozone layer for hair volume. Before regulations, aerosol sprays used CFCs that severely damaged the ozone layer. Scientists discovered in the 1970s that human vanity, hairspray, deodorants, cleaning products, was punching a hole in Earth's atmospheric shield. Humanity nearly undermined its own survival for styling convenience. The global ban on CFCs is considered one of the few times humanity noticed stupidity in time to stop it. 39. The U.S. Army's Operation Acoustic Kitty. In the 1960s, the CIA implanted microphones and transmitters into a cat, hoping it could spy on Soviet leaders. The program cost millions. The cat was released for its first mission, walked into traffic, and was promptly hit by a taxi. The project was canceled immediately. Records later described it as infeasible due to cat behavior. 40. The time a scientist tried to weigh a soul by measuring a dying patient. In 1907, Dr. Duncan McDougall placed dying patients on industrial scales, attempting to measure the weight of the soul as it left the body. The experiments were sloppy, inconsistent, and scientifically meaningless, but newspapers sensationalized the results. For a brief moment, society believed the soul weighed 21 grams. It remains one of the strangest pseudoscientific experiments in history. 41. the factory that ignored a gas leak until it leveled the building. In 1992, a Thai plastics factory detected a strong gas smell. Instead of evacuating, supervisors assumed it would dissipate. Workers continued production. The accumulated vapors eventually ignited, causing an explosion that killed dozens and injured hundreds. Investigators concluded the disaster was entirely preventable. The cause wasn't the gas itself, but the complacency of ignoring it. 42. The man who tried to dry dynamite in an oven. In the early 1900s, a worker at a mining site noticed sticks of dynamite that had become damp. Believing heat would reactivate them, he placed them into an oven. They detonated, destroying the building. Surprisingly, he survived, with minor injuries. Authorities said the incident demonstrated a profound misunderstanding of explosives. 43. The time a government destroyed an entire library to make space for a parking lot. In the 1960s, a city in the U.S. demolished a historic library containing rare manuscripts, some centuries old, to build a parking lot. Citizens protested. Officials argued cars were the future. Decades later, the parking lot was abandoned and eventually torn down. The priceless manuscripts were lost forever. Urban planners still cite it as a case study in irreversible civic stupidity. 44. The man who used a vacuum cleaner to remove gasoline, causing an explosion. A man in Canada attempted to clean spilled gasoline using a household vacuum cleaner. The fumes ignited inside the machine, causing an explosion that destroyed his garage. He survived, telling investigators he didn't think gas was that flammable. Firefighters called it an instructive reminder. 45. The country that nearly started a war over a soccer match. In 1969, escalating tensions between El Salvador and Honduras were triggered by World Cup qualifying matches. Riots, political hostility, and violence spiraled into a brief but deadly military conflict known as the Football War. The war lasted 100 hours. Thousands died. Historians emphasize soccer wasn't the real cause, just the spark that ignited deeper issues. Still, humanity almost started a war over a scorecard. Humanity has never needed help to destroy itself. Across these 30 historical and scientific failures, one pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Humanity's greatest disasters rarely come from malice. They come from confidence, from entire societies agreeing on ideas that made sense emotionally, politically, or spiritually, but not logically. In the ancient world, people trusted omens over strategy, superstition over hygiene, and storytelling over science. Trojans celebrated a wooden trap. Medita's nations fought disease by banning baths. Empires burned the very fleets that made them powerful, and cities stored gunpowder in their living rooms as if it were flour. Science didn't save us either. It detonated reactors, lost spacecraft to unit conversions, created fatbergs the size of whales, and nearly flooded cities with experimental rainmaking. Early doctors prescribed mercury, arsenic, radium, and tobacco with absolute confidence. Entire eras of medicine were built on treatments far deadlier than the diseases they targeted. Then came society, the collective mind that panics easier than individuals. Witch trials, prohibition, lead pipes, wetland destruction, radium cosmetics, and doomsday prophecies all grew from the same human flaw, the assumption that everybody believes this, so it must be true. What these stories reveal is not stupidity in moments. It's stupidity in systems, when bad ideas are repeated, normalized, standardized, and enforced across generations. As we enter the final stretch of this file, one question remains. If this is what humanity has done in the past, what chaos is it quietly preparing next? Humanity, a species built on ideas too big for its own logic. If there's one thing these 45 stories prove, it's that humanity's greatest threat has never been nature, technology, or even conflict. It's us, our confidence, our assumptions, our ability to believe in ideas so passionately we forget to question whether they make any sense at all. History books like to frame human progress as a journey of innovation, discovery, and enlightenment. But read closely enough, and you'll see a second story running underneath. A shadow history made of errors, shortcuts, impulsive decisions, and moments where the entire species collectively shrugged and said, "This seems fine," right before everything went up in flames. Empires didn't fall because they were weak. They fell because someone made a decision that was spectacularly wrong. Scientists didn't cause disasters because they were uneducated. They caused them because they trusted instinct more than data. Societies didn't adopt bad ideas because they were foolish. They adopted them because the ideas felt comfortable, familiar, or convenient. Humans burned fleets that could have shaped continents. They drained wetlands that protected their cities. They poisoned themselves with cosmetics, medicine, paint, and wellness tonics. They destroyed their own ecosystems with imported animals. They fought wars over misunderstandings, pride, or sports scores. And they placed their faith in wooden horses, ghosts, radium, tobacco, astrology, and bureaucrats who confidently measured success in exactly the wrong units. What makes these stories haunting isn't the scale of destruction. It's the normalcy of the decisions that caused it. A manager approves a plan. A scientist tries a new method. A government passes a law. A group of people accept a belief. And somewhere down the line, a city floods, a species collapses, a nation implodes, or an entire era becomes a cautionary tale. But beneath the absurdity lies the uncomfortable truth that makes this file more than just entertainment. Humanity didn't stop making catastrophic mistakes. It just got better at hiding them inside complexity. We laugh at the past because distance makes it safe. But every empire believed it was rational. Every scientist believed they were right. Every society believed it understood the world, until the moment it didn't. So as we close this file, remember, humanity's brilliance and stupidity are not opposites. They are twins, born from the same curiosity, the same ambition, the same desire to shape the world without always understanding it. This has been the Absurdist Files, 45 dumbest things humanity has ever done. A reminder that progress is never guaranteed. Logic is never permanent. And history is written not only by the victors, but by the disasters they barely survived.